I was in a conversation with someone in the last week, and we got to talking about the great meta-myth, the meta-myth, which, as I understand it, was defined and outlined by the great anthropologist and mythologist Joseph Campbell. If you don't know Joseph Campbell, I invite you to become familiar with him. He, I think, pretty convincingly points that the meta-myth is the cultural, is not unique to any particular culture, that is found in every tradition around the world. And the meta-myth is the story of a person who is at a certain point in life fairly successful, healthy, stable, and something happens and there's a descent, there's a loss. It could be anything, a loss of one level of status, one level of emotional, physical comfort, and that's lost. And there's a descent into a hell. Well, sometimes it's called a place of ashes. The great story of falling into the ashes, where everything that you had is gone. And we sit in ashes. The heroes in these stories, heroines and heroes in these stories, stay in ashes for as long as it takes. And then typically in these stories, and again, these are cross-cultural, they're in Asia and Africa and North American Indians, every culture. At some point, the hero or heroine in our story, having sat in ashes, depressed, lonely, abandoned, at some point, somebody, some entity will reach out a hand and invite that person to allow themselves to be pulled out of ashes. And that begins the ascent, the return from this very dark, frightening, sad place to a new place, a new way of life, a new way of seeing things. And this is represented in mythology, it's represented in religious traditions, it just appears everywhere. It's represented in literature, it's represented in movies. Not coincidentally, Joseph Campbell was a good friend of George Lucas. So when Lucas made the original Star Wars movies, he borrowed from Campbell's notion of the meta-myth. And if you know the meta-myth, you know that every movie, story, book, or comic book you've ever read follows the same pattern, because it's the human experience repeated over and over and over again. And I have experienced that over and over again, and you have, and you have, and you have. It's the story of life. To be comfortable and settled and feel like the future is predictable. Something happens, the bottom drops out, and I'm in ashes. I didn't see this one coming. Oh no. Fill in the blank. I'll never be happy again. I'll never be healthy again. I'll never be loved again. I'll never, blah, blah, blah. In ashes. It's a psychological, deeply emotional, troubling place. And you all know what that feels like, right? Right? It's phenomenal that that's the story of humanity. I bring it up this morning for obvious reasons, to me obvious reasons, because we're all in ashes right now. What we thought was normal and predictable and sort of had it on this typical, predictable future, it's done. Stop it. It's done. Unless you're very, very close or live with somebody that you're very, very close to, you can't even hug somebody safely. That's hard for some people. Like me. Can't go have lunch. I always go to lunch with you. Can't sit around and have a cup of coffee. All that is done. And for some people, this period, which I'm labeling as ashes, is very, very difficult because it brings up enormous fear. enormous fear. And that's a wonderful thing if you're open to it. It opens up the door to the possibility of looking at ourselves at a very deep level. Why am I so scared? Why am I so hyper vigilant? I better be vigilant because people are dying every day. But is there some place along the way here where this has become unhealthy, psychologically unhealthy, hyper vigilant? And if it has, is that a bad thing? No, it's not bad. But how did that happen? Is it really serve me to be that way? So, to my point, according to the tradition, Siddhartha Gautama, the historic Buddha, left a very comfortable place of privilege. He was the prince, the son of a king. And he left because he was unhappy, he was uncomfortable, he was confused, and he wanted to learn more about the world. And after he left, little by little, he went into ashes. He gave up all of his possessions. He abandoned his wife and child, gave up his privilege as a prince, went into the forest, and over the course of years lost everything, materially. Lost everything materially. And when he was deepest in ashes, you've seen this drawings and statues of the Buddha with sunken cheeks and ribs, distended ribs. They said he lived on 1 grain of rice a day. He was nearly dead. He was determined. And then, according to the story, a milkmaid, a young woman, came along and said, "You don't look good." "I know." She said, "Maybe you should have some curd or milk," or it depends on the story. And he took it, and that's the other side, the beginning of the ascent, the reaching out of a hand, a gesture of another person, to pull us out of the descent, out of ashes rather. And once he was healthy again, physically healthy again, he went back into his meditation and ultimately had the Great Awakening. And this is what we're all doing every day, in my view. We are living the metamyth. All of us have had major losses. All of us have had major unexpected transitions in our life, and now in our culture, our species. And in ashes, there's great opportunity for learning. What is it about this particular event or this particular thing that has me so distraught, has me so upside down and fearful? And it's the same question that we can ask any time about anything that disturbs our peace of mind. What is it about this that's so troubling? What's going on here that's so troubling? She loved me this morning, and now this afternoon she's yelling at me. Why? What's going on here? Because I judge it has to be recognized that the metamyth occurs every day of our life. Typically it's little things. Often it's big, gigantic things. All the people who've lost their jobs, all the people who've had to turn their lives upside down in the last month, they will have to completely reorganize the way they think about their life and their family. That's pretty big. What is there in ashes at that most difficult, most challenging part of the journey? What is it that I can learn? What is it that opportunity presents to me? And in the story of the Buddha, the outcome was awakening. The outcome was awakening, to truly wake up and understand clearly and deeply the nature of things. So be grateful for this gift we all have. Maybe a few of us will wake up.